Declaration of interest, ladies and gentlemen. Is everybody interested? Has anybody got any interest they would like to declare? If not, you can do so as we progress through the meeting, as I'm sure you know. Thank you so much. Everybody in possession of previous minutes? I heard a no there. Okay. Anything arising from those minutes not already on today's agenda? Cttee? Yeah, please do.
Yes, item 8.3, it was a question by Mr. Carpen about the number of inspections that private inspectors may do on new developments, and I suggested it might be as few as 1 in 30, but I've investigated and it's not as bad as that. It's as few as 1 in 10.
Oh, good. So they were well pleased with that then. Good. Okay, that will take us to page 15, actions from that meeting. Don't worry, I don't intend to read them all. It would be a long time if I do that. So we'll just go through those if there are anything to raise from that. You can see, those of you who have these minutes, that the progress is written up already in the last column, so I'm not going to bore you all by reading all of that. That would be a bit silly. There was 1 or 2 things I think we needed to just cover. Yes, open forum, page 18. Clear sign is required for 20-mile-an-hour speed limit when entering Coldham's Lane. Councillor Crawford, I don't have the progress in there. Any update on that, Simon?
I have actually reported it to the highways. I have actually reported it, and they are actually investigating it.
Okay, there's no action again?
Not yet, no.
Okay, thank you. The next one is the bottom of that page, down to me, Councillor McPherson, that must be me. To write to Armour requests electric buses used instead of diesel one as a shuttle bus. Now, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, the committee manager, James, has actually drafted a letter, but I don't believe that's gone off yet, and if not, that is entirely my fault, and I will take responsibility for that, because I think what happened was he sent it to me, and I think I've forgotten to sign it, so that is entirely my fault, and I'll make sure that's done first thing tomorrow. So that one is down to me, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, yeah.
There's the first item was regarding the safety on the guided busway, particularly at the entrance of the Cambridge Assessment Centre. And Councillor AD suggested he might investigate. After that, after the last meeting, there was a visitor who got hit by the wing mirror of a guided bus, so I intervened, and on the 21st of June I met Sonia Hansen from the Highways plus several other people, and we walked up the guided busway to Cambridge Assessment Centre where Councillor Noel Kavanagh joined us, and the County Council have since lowered the fencing on either side of the entrance to the assessment so that there's better vision, and it was also agreed that some white warning lines would be painted alongside the guided busway to warn people that there was a raised curb there, and it's also been agreed that they will be putting some stickers along to warn people to be cautious, so I'm still following up on 2 of the promised actions.
Next one I have is back to you, Sandra. Tree branches proven as they obscure traffic lights near Robin Hood. Query follow up with county officers. Is there a response on that?
I have actually reported that to the highways as well. I think they're going to, when the bird nesting season's over, they're going to come and have a look at it.
Okay, but they haven't come back to us.
No, it's a bit early yet.
Okay.
The next, yes, we're trying to advertise this meeting, and I'm glad so many people are here, so I don't know if any of you heard the little video we did. It was our first attempt, and we'll be trying to improve on that for the next one and subsequent ones, but watch out for tweeting and videos.
I was told it was best I didn't appear. I can't think what that was. There we go. Okay. I think that takes us to the end of those matters of writing, unless anybody has anything else to add for that, or I've missed anything. Everybody happy with that? Absolutely splendid. In that case, item 5, that would be Sergeant Jim Stevenson. It's all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much again for inviting me to come and talk to you. Before we just go on to the report, I'd just like to introduce PC Adam Catling, who's just recently joined my team, in fact, a week ago exactly today. He'll be working exclusively in the South area with the new Police Now recruit we get in 28th of September. 28th of September, there we go. So that's 2 new officers focused on issues in the South, working for the neighbourhood policing team, which is a much needed improvement on my current staffing. Have you all had a chance to read my report?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm supposed to read it out. If you want to go straight to questions, and I'll do my best to answer.
Councillors?
Yeah, good. Just like to raise the point about Cambridge Lakes and not Romsey Lakes, because it is in Cherrington, not Romsey. We suffer every year by the intrusion by members of the public who don't give a fig how they get into that site, and they don't worry what litter and the car parking problems they cause around that site. We always seem to have the problem of getting through the fencing, and what I'd like to say is, and I'll put on record, Andersons have spent a lot of money on their fencing, and I think Andersons get a lot of undue pressure to say what you're doing about your site. But for people who live around there, they know the area where they jump across, which is owned by Peterhouse. And I was wondering whether or not, as the police, we've tried as councillors, whether or not you could have a word maybe with Peterhouse to find out whether or not they would allow fencing to go on that site, because what they do, they jump over onto that Peterhouse bit of ground, you know where it is, Jim, I'll have to tell you, and then they access the Anderson ones and rip their fences down. And again, in a sense, Peterhouse are getting scot-free from this, and almost no blame attached, and the rest of us are suffering. And I think it would be a simple remedy to get adequate fencing put up there, because this year one girl lost a finger trying to get into it as well. We've had people now, I think you've seen the photographs, where they're bringing mobile bridges to put across the brook as well, to make it easier just to walk across and take heavy equipment. And again, if we can stop that egress there, I think that would make a big difference. So just like to see whether or not that's possible.
I'm more than happy to discuss it with them. I've spent quite a bit of time talking to Andersons about the situation, discussing ways that they can obviously secure their premises. I appreciate that initial strip's owned by Peterhouse. I have talked to them as well. Their investment strategy, shall we say, is different to Andersons. The most effective thing we've found so far is the city rangers effectively clearing the brook every time those little mobile bridges appear. And Cheryl, I know, who's my PCSO for the area, spent a lot of time. If she includes that area regularly on patrol route, if she sees bridges, she calls the rangers. They're normally there within the hour. They've been fantastic, clear the bridges away. But certainly next time I have a chance to talk to Peterhouse about it, I will suggest that they spend some money and see how that goes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Going to busway.
Yes.
I don't need to tell you what's going on now, I'm sure you know. I know you mentioned in here recommendations about lighting. Now, we've got a bit of fun and games this morning. You might know there's 2 routes through to Foster Road with the busway. The northern route through, we successfully got developers to schedule putting in lighting, that was starting in January. But the southern route, via chicken coops, I've had some disagreement from various officers about the efficacy of putting in lighting and the side effects of it. And didn't leave up different views, perfectly valid reasons. I was just wondering if we could get your view as a police officer in a form of record. Do you think lighting on that section, if I mean a section I mean, would be a good idea and would it help reduce crime? Because that gives me something to take back. Thank you.
I think any improvements that improve the natural surveillance of the busway will help to reduce crime and disorder on the busway. Because if people see groups of people hanging around on that area or anything they don't like, they are quite likely, from their bathroom window while they're brushing their teeth at 10 o'clock at night, things like that. In my experience, those people call us, we find out about it, we can then target that activity in an effective manner because we know when it's happening and where. I think one of the busway's biggest problems to date has been the lack of natural surveillance from surrounding houses, surrounding businesses, which has sort of advertised it to groups of people who don't want to be seen hanging around in public where people are likely to call the police.
Thank you.
You got the update on your new IT system?
I wish I had. No, unfortunately. So I'm sorry about the lack of crime figures. Every time I ask, I get the answer, we're working on it.
Just following on from Councillor O'Connell's question, is your recommendation to remove graffiti? I just wondered if you can explain about that, because I think it's something that the residents would be interested in and maybe getting involved in removing the graffiti as well.
First of all, Councillor, Inspector Rogerson wrote the report while I was on holiday for Sept. Yeah, the language is not quite the language I'd have used, but we're not the same person. Again, the prevailing theory, obviously, graffiti in public spaces is the kind of thing that encourages people who might be empowered by the idea that the area is not as well looked after as it could be to hang around there because they won't be bothered. I think we've all heard of the broken windows theory that was purported by the New York Police Department in the 90s. That's where that comes from. I think the smarter an area looks and the more that people travelling into the area, visiting the area, think that the local community are interested in what goes on there and interested in looking after their community and their environment, the less likely they are to hang around in that environment. It's the long and short of it.
Okay, in that case I've got a couple.
Far away.
Guided bus, James.
Yes.
That's, I know it's in the report, and I'm going to suggest that as a priority because the robberies are still occurring. I know one that happened only last Friday, which I'm sure you do too, and the victim of that was going to perhaps come here this evening, but I don't think he has, to explain what happened. The young victim, I have to say, was going to come here with his mum today, but perhaps they just didn't feel like it. So that was only last Friday, and we've got all the details of that, so we know how that happened. And that was at the Trumpington end of the guided bus. So that's still an ongoing issue in spite of the arrests that are in the report. So that was one thing, and I guess you'll come to that in your report. The second thing is the dispersal of the street beggars that you've got in the report, I think has resulted in them turning up in the Sherrington area. And there's been quite a number of complaints about actual open-air drug dealing right outside the Chinese takeaway that the staff have witnessed on a number of occasions. So those are the two things that I've got concern.
Actually, Councillor, as well as keeping the bit on about proactive patrols of the busway, I'd actually like to extend that to the whole of Trumpington village itself. The changing nature, I don't want to go too much into the tactical activity we're doing in Trumpington at the moment, partly because I don't want to read about it tomorrow in the paper. But there is a lot of police activity going on in Trumpington at the moment. Some of it you will see, a lot of it you won't, but it is there. The problems that we had on the busway now seem to have moved into some of the green spaces in Trumpington as well. We're targeting that very actively at the moment. That investigative investigative part is being headed up by Detective Inspector Dave Saville. So it's reached the point now where we're doing lots of work across lots of teams targeting that crime series in Trumpington and at that end of the busway. And we are contributing to that, but clearly there is a lot of other activity that I don't have direct control over. So rest assured, yeah, that's one of my list of things that I think we ought to keep on there. Active patrols of the busway to stop them returning there, and then targeted activity in the rest of Trumpington. Yes, the injunctions that the City Council's ASB team got against some of our street beggars. The reason they turn up in Cherry Hinton High Street is because some of them reside there, not the High Street, in Cherry Hinton. So rather than walking to town and breach their injunction, they seem to have moved to banging on the High Street in Cherry Hinton. I guess it's less part of the walk. I'm in constant contact with the street outreach team and the Counting Every Adults team who deal with people who are sort of chronically excluded from services. We have a strategy to tackle that, and Cheryl is regularly talking to the people at the Chinese takeaway, and any intel we collect, such as what you've just described, we are feeding into the impact team who target that activity.
Any other questions for the officers? Oh, yeah. Go ahead, George.
It's not a question, I think just for me, I think I have to share publicly an email I received from somebody who lives in Trumpington, as you said, people after shopping at Waitrose in Trumpington, the main place of the attacks is a pedestrian path between A1301 and the guided bus lane. Is the path through the Trumpington Allotment Society. Yesterday I have witnessed myself one of the attacks, just to come home to find out my neighbor was also attacked. So it's just, I've already spoken to the officer in private, but also making you aware that this was sent to me 2 days ago, so this is going on, okay? Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for the officers out there? Wow, you're going to get away with it. Please, thank you so much.
I can't let you go with it. Just about the guided busway, really. Just about the guided busway, we cycle it in an evening, and I just think it kind of fits in with the transport that maybe is going to be discussed later. It's very low lighting over the whole of the guided busway. I cycled my 10-year-old daughter from basically Adam Brooks to the Trumpington Park and Ride for football training, and that section is very dark. I've heard stuff in the paper, and at least if there was lighting, you can see people, and actually we'd probably turn around and go back onto the roads. So it's kind of discouraging us to actually use that facilities.
So
that's all the guided busway.
Absolutely. Obviously, I have no part in the planning process where they decided what road. Clearly, the guided busway has some issues. It is a big piece of Cambridge transport infrastructure. It's also headline news whenever anyone mentions it. Having looked at the crime and incident reports that have occurred on the busway over the last 15 months, I had the intelligence department headquarters writing an analytical product on it. I can't share it with you because it's restricted. It has lots of personal detail in about people we think are actually committing some of these offences. It is no less safe than any other major piece of transport infrastructure in Cambridge. Hills Road, Trumpington Road, they all have their issues. Please do not think that you are any more vulnerable on the busway than you are on any other road. However, I appreciate, like any other piece of infrastructure in Cambridge, it could be improved. And as Councillor O'Connor mentioned about the lighting, if there's anything I can do to help improve the infrastructure, I will.
I mean, for that, I just wanted no for the record. And my final point against that is, on Hills Road, I have an exit plan because I'll go into the street.
Yeah.
On the guided busway with my 10-year-old daughter, I don't have an exit strategy.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It's, again, I think all the adults in the room will know, we know how to get around town safely. The guided busway just needs a slightly alternative approach because it's a different piece of infrastructure to what we're used to. But please, I've seen some horrible stories in the press about people saying they're never going to use the guided busway again because it's not safe. You know, It's no less safe than any other major route into the city. And we will police it to the best of our ability. Both dressed like this, where you can see us, and maybe slightly more obscurely dressed to encounter you. And hopefully then with me will be the people I want to have a chat with about what they're doing.
Thank you.
I say chat, I do the chatting. Adam does the other stuff.
Okay, have we any other questions for the officers? Yes, please.
Just an observation about the beggars in Cherry Hinton. It's very unpleasant for the people who shop at Tesco Express and have to go down the alleyway between the two places. The staff, I think, they must be exasperated by some of the what's happening for them in there. So, yeah, just an observation, really. Yeah.
Folks, obviously, certainly the beggars that have moved to Cherry Hinton High Street, the City Council's injunctions against those individuals are open to constant review. Any information I get, I pass on to the antisocial behaviour team, because if they have enough information, they will take those injunctions back to County Court and they will get them varied to include new parts of the city. But the judge at County Court will only include an area where the council can demonstrate evidence from residents such as yourself that it is a problem. So please feel free to report it to us, report it directly to the City Council's antisocial behaviour team. Once we have enough evidence to apply for a variation to the injunction, we will.
Presumably Tesco have actually complained.
We've done quite a lot of work with Tesco's. Initially, we asked them to stop taking them free coffee. But yeah, again, for a lot of the shops in Cherry Hinton, to be fair to the business and managers down there as well, it was a completely unfamiliar scenario for them. Like I said, this is a side effect of some positive action that's occurred in the town centre to reduce the amount of aggressive begging in the city centre. But these individuals don't just go away just because I've handed them a piece of paper saying you're banned from an area. Likewise, they don't go away when we report them for offences and they go to court, and guess what? They get fined. That's really helpful, isn't it? Which they then go out and beg to pay their fines. Or they don't pay their fines, and then the court tell us to arrest them, and then they say that 24 hours in police custody is a sufficient remedy for not paying their fines. So this is not obviously an issue that's confined to the south. It's quite new to the south because of some of the proactive work that's taken place in the town centre. But we will copy those tactics in Cherry Hinton to deal with the problem there.
Very good.
Yes, just following on from the residents' observations, how many reports do you need before the injunction can be served? Because I know myself, Russ and Rob have notified various officials after residents have contacted us, and I presume the residents feel that because we've contacted them, action will be taken. So to hear that there has to be so many, in a sense, complaints before action will be taken, it'd be nice to know what that level is, because I'm sure we can get enough people to actually sign that to say, yeah, we've got hundreds of people complaining. So it'd be nice to know how many people we need to sign that.
I think your best bet for an answer to that question, Councillor, is the City Council's ASB team. We're talking about stuff that occurs at County Court. It's not my area of expertise, because County Court is the civil justice system and not the criminal one, so I'm not very familiar with it at all. But certainly the City Council's legal department, I'm sure, will know how much they need to present to a County Court judge. Oh, yeah, sorry, of course.
Just to add to Councillor, I'll definitely take this on board, because obviously the issue will come and sit with the ASB team.
Right.
But with the team proactively responsible for the injunction on News Road, obviously. So one of the things that we'll be looking at is the detail of evidence that's come to us, and we'll share that with the police, and obviously we'll liaise with the various councillors that have been contacted by the members public to make sure that we are actually capturing all the evidence so that we can move forward with it.
Okay, thank you.
Any others?
I have a question.
Yeah, yes, please.
Excuse me.
Just hang on to the microphone, just in case we've got a hearing loop.
My name is Manas. The previous trend of burglaries and thefts in Queen Edith's and also in other parts of Cambridge was, the the same gang, they would enter your house probably, in midnight in your absence, and then take jewelries, cash, and valuables, laptops, etc. But the new trend, which has emerged in last 6 months or about 10 months, they drive away with your car. And it has happened in few places. I'm aware of it. I personally visited those families and took it up with Police and Crime Commissioner. But what I want to know from you, what measures, what actions are we taking to make them feel comfortable, those people who are really scared of this?
I suppose one of the unfortunate side effects, folks, of the improvements that manufacturers have made to car security over the last, since the 90s really, is that now it's pretty much impossible to steal a car without its key. Which means that the incidence of vehicles being stolen off driveways by people turning up with copies of keys, because, for instance, the 1992 Ford Escort only had 12 different keys amongst its entire fleet.
I would remember that.
I remember my dad getting into a Citroen estate in a car park one day, and me and him sitting there in an IKEA car park, and he turned around after he started the engine and went, Whose tape is in the tape now? And we realised it wasn't our car. To get out of it, lock it, move 3 cars down 3 doors down the bay and get in our actual car, which was exactly the same make, model and colour. So that was my introduction as a teenager to how easy it would be to steal cars. Right, so the practical effect of that is now they can either clone your car key, which is actually surprisingly sophisticated technologically, or they need your car key. We had a resurgence of this thing called letterbox burglaries, where they would stick objects through your letterbox if they could see your car keys on like the hall table. I used to call it a telephone table, but nobody knows what that is under the age of about 40. And that's the distressing aspect of then not only is your car stolen, but you've been burgled as well, and that, I think, everybody can appreciate is one of the most harrowing experiences, the invasion of your personal space and privacy. We have a crime prevention officer who visits or will visit any victim of burglary who contacts them and go around and talk about how to improve home security. I suppose it's a little late, but she can't visit every house in the city. And we do really concern ourselves with stopping those people becoming repeat victims. The spate of thefts we had in the run-up to the last report, councillors, that organised crime group that was responsible for that particular bit has been disrupted. But car key burglary is a much more, I suppose, common form of burglary than the specific group that offence are committing. And lots of our own homegrown Cambridge burglars know how to commit that offence. If anyone has been a victim of burglary and wants to contact the police and arrange a visit from our crime prevention officer, have a reassurance visit from one of our community support officers, they are more than welcome to do so. We will do that every day of the week. The level of burglary in the south has gone back to what we would classify as a normal level. I'm not going to call it acceptable, because I don't think any level of it is acceptable, but it is not. Whereas in the previous reporting period it was a lot higher than we were anticipating, this has now returned to a state of normality, for want of a better phrase. But still, if anyone has got concerns, community concerns, contact us. The serious crime team at Parkside, focusing on burglary, is one of their primary responsibilities. We are in this perpetual cycle of we catch a new burglar, we send him to prison, then the one that we caught 3 years ago is released, and we chase him until we catch him and then send him to prison. And these things go in, I suppose, cycles. We have good periods, we have bad periods, depending on who's out and who we believe, until obviously we can prove it and send them back to prison. That's absolutely no reason not to contact the police. We will do our best to help any victim of burglary whenever we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hate me.
It's okay, I hate everybody. Only the chairman can work properly. You alluded to the fact earlier that some of the problems in Cherry Hinton are now people who've had an injunction served on them in the city centre. Increasingly in Crumpton as Crumpton's grown, I think now we're seeing this across the south area, we are getting situations where we think we're solving the problem in one area, and where previously it moved out of our area, it's just moved somewhere else in our area. We're not actually solving these problems a lot of the time, we're just moving them around because someone else suffers. Do you think the injunctions are actually helping get people off the street, breaking the begging cycle? Or, you know, even if it's helping a bit, that's good, we can put resource there. If it's not helping at all, we need to look for other solutions.
It's not really my area of expertise. Sergeant Missick is the streetlight lead for the city, but I think it is helping. I don't think it was the cure-all that everyone was hoping for, but then I'm quite cynical, so I didn't have that opinion. But I think the activity we've got, certainly our attempts to tackle certain individuals through the criminal justice system and through criminal behaviour orders were very slow and often quite... sometimes it's difficult to explain to a CPS lawyer why this is important when actually they're supposed to be dealing with persistent burglars or the robbery series, and so occasionally they would sit there and go, well, you know, tell us why we should take this to court, and we would go, because everyone in Cambridge hates it. But that's kind of difficult to be a motive when you're trying to explain to a lawyer about why we should proceed on the evidence we've got. I think the whole strategy for dealing with persistent street begging in Cambridge is under review at the moment anyway. I know our superintendent is very keen on a discussion with the leader of the council about what strategy we use, whether or not there are some refinements we can make to improve it, because certainly the sort of cycle we've got into doesn't seem to be particularly effective, but the injunctions are something new. So I think we'll have to see how responsive the county courts are to extending them, expanding them, increasing them to more individuals, and then we'll have to move on, if that doesn't work, to talking about things like public space protection orders and things.
No more questions? Okay, I'll read out. I've got one written one, and although breaking my own rules, how appalling. I have one written one, although we just touched on it. Mr. Clark, are we here somewhere?
Yes.
Hello. I know we've conversed by email, haven't we?
Yes.
So this is just going back to the trespassing of the lakes and St Bees Crescent, but also Mr Clark has put on here parking whilst visiting the lakes. So I know that's quite an issue as well. So rather than just going over, because you were kind enough to write this down, I know bouncing back just a little bit, but if you don't mind, just touch on that. Did you want to say a little bit more about that, Mr Clark?
Yeah, about the mess that's been left there recently as well. I know you said about the bridges that are taken down. I actually had the housing officer for Cambridge, I spoke to her, and she said put a barricade outside your driveway so as they can't park there. So I built one out of a scaffold board. Scaffold board ended up as a bridge, which I had to go then rescue from the brook. There is at the moment a settee in there, there is at the moment other things, lumps of wood in there, there's a piece of rope going across. At the far end, near the allotments, the other end, they have now broken into the other end now down near us. And like I say, through the summer, it was horrendous. We had 7 fires. These two gentlemen here are with us, local residents as well. We had 7 fire units down there to rescue one guy that had gone over there and broke his leg, or broke his ankle, or whatever. And we've had fires over there, 2 lots of fire engines over there at night to try and put fires out, but they've set light to trees. Especially in the summer we've had this year with the heat, it's dangerous. And no one, every time I ring anybody up, nothing ever happens. I phone the police, you occasionally come around and move a few vehicles. I've got to get access to my driveway at the back because I run a property maintenance business. So I need access. I can't leave my van on the road because in case it gets broken into, it's not insured. So I cannot get in and out of my driveway if they park along the back.
Yeah.
And nothing, it just means we're forever shouting and I'm forever emailing, I'm so sorry, but all over through the summer, at Russ and Mr. Dryden, to sort it out, but nothing seems to be happening.
Yeah. I think Russ, how long have me and you kind of worked together on this? 7 years?
A long time,
Yeah,
James.
okay.
I was only 8 when we started.
Must have been in utero. Right. I mean, I think the long-term solution is going to be doing something productive with that space, so that it isn't attractive to people who go there because they know it's isolated from authority and they can behave and they can behave in a way that they probably wouldn't want us to catch them doing and tell their parents about. I really appreciate the fact that these people park antisocially, blocking driveways, they leave litter, the scaffolding plank is one example I've known. They've used wheelie bins that they've borrowed off residents to build bridges across the brook and all sorts of things. The practical result is I have to work with the landowners to tackle this. I have no power to deal with the civil trespass, which is what 99% of the problem occurring on that side.
Yeah, if you stop the trespassing, you're going to stop the parking.
I can't stop the trespassing. It's civil. It's not criminal. I have no powers. So I appreciate, certainly for things like the fire service going on there, we will accompany the fire service, but civil trespass is not a criminal matter.
So where do we go from here? Where do I go from here? What can I do next?
Right, okay, so certainly if a vehicle is blocking your driveway and it's been left there, we will come and try and move it.
But every time I've rung up, in the end they got so fed up, the police got so fed up with me ringing up, so they said we can't do it anymore.
Right. Well, I'm sorry to hear that was the response you got. The long-term solution is going to be making some use of that land, which I have talked to various council members who are interested in that kind of project. I have talked to the landowner about, like I said, I just don't see how logistically and economically they could do any more. There is a long-term solution there, but it is not in my gift to give.
So I was being told by the housing officer of that area that I could put up a barricade or something to stop them parking there. Can I have this in writing? Can I have it in writing that I'm allowed to put up a barricade, something on there? Because I can make a pretty reasonable job of it, so they can't lift it, they can't move it.
Is it your driveway?
That they're blocking? I can't get in and out if they park there, no.
Right, I would say, so you'd be extending this fence into the...
It'll be on the council. It'll be on the council.
I mean, again, if the housing officer says that they think you'd be entitled to do that for, if it's an area of parking that's controlled by the housing officer...
But I want it in writing to say that I can do that, so as I can get in and out of my driveway.
Yeah, no, I get that. Off the housing officer who's advised you that that's their solution, I think that would be a great idea. But I can't give you that because I don't know exactly the situation you've got. But I certainly can't advise you to build barricades into the public highway.
There's nothing they can do to stop people parking in the residents' parking areas.
Right.
Because they said there's no, that they're allowed to do that. Okay. So I've been told, and I've got no argument at all. These two gentlemen here, where they live, is full of the cars that are going over there, and they turn up in, there must be 10 cars all parked in there on one day, and they're all getting changed in these. It's a changing room, and it's now, as we've been told, called the swimming lakes.
That's been called that for a long time. There was a website advertising it at one point, I believe.
There was.
Yeah.
Just showed the world just where it was.
Yeah, along with a Google Maps reference and you name it. I think certainly local people have been using that as a unorthodox swimming point for, since longer than I've been alive. The problem is now we're getting people travelling from much further afield, but the offence they commit of trespassing on your private residence bays is not one I have an illegal power to deal with. The offence they commit where they trespass on Anderson's property to access the lake is not one I have an illegal power to deal with, because it's not a criminal offence. If your housing association have a plan for securing the private car park, then, I mean, it's their space to help you secure, I think. Not knowing your exact setup, I couldn't comment.
No one has seen it, no. No one has come down and seen it, but you wouldn't believe how bad it was during the summer.
I would say, yeah, because it's happened in other parts of Cambridge.
But it was really bad this year.
This year, I mean, the minute we had that...
And it still is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's pallets still floating in the brook now.
Well, I mean, I can speak to the rangers about that, they can fish them out.
Okay, I think we've gone as far as we can get with that. Although the frustration I know well, I've been down there and seen it for myself. What we can attempt to do is to get, once again, pull the landowners together. And it isn't, as Mark rightly said, it's not always Anderson's fault. The Anderson company have a higher profile because they've been trying to utilise that piece of land, and so they've had a higher profile. But there are other landowners, and the only thing we can do, because you're quite right, it's private property, so it is down to the landowners to secure that. So what we'll do is, whether I'm successful in this, I don't know, but we'll ask them to come to the next meeting here, but try and meet with you before that. But the next meeting we have here, because I know it will have dropped off by then, and people don't have the same level of interest. But I think it's still worth trying to formulate some better plan with them before we get to next summer. If we want them to the next south area, so people can ask them, but prior to that, if we meet with them and try and formulate some sort of plan before we get here, rather than just bouncing it around the room and get nowhere, that is a pointless exercise. We need to have a direction before we actually come in. So we try and put that together. I'll contact you and see if we can meet up with you and some of your residents, and then invite them here to the next south area. That wasn't bad when I made that all up as I went along. But I think that will probably work if we do something like that. What the outcome, how successful and practical terms that is, I don't know. But we can at least do that and try and address that issue.
Okay.
Chair, we will of course be happy to come down and contribute in whichever way we can to that. But like I said, our powers to deal with some, well, 99% of that is quite limited.
I'll keep you in the loop.
But I will help any way I can.
Okay, so we're down to the priorities. What did you have in mind?
Certainly I think we should keep the guided busway, especially the stretch between Long Road Bridge and the Trumpington Park and Ride on there, and I'd like to actually add the public areas in and around Trumpington Village, some high visibility patrols, and any other tactical activity that the investigation team think is appropriate.
And the High Street paving, Shillington?
We can put that on there as well, Councillor Sim, I think that'd be good. The last priority we had about the Mill Park opening, it didn't open until 3 weeks ago, so it was a little delayed compared to what we were thinking, wasn't it, Mara?
Yes, it was. It opened on the 13th of August, I understand. So far, my information is that it's been very well positively received. We've not picked up any issues specific to the area. We continue to work together as stakeholders, agencies at CV1, predominantly working and engaging the residents there, so we're aware of what's going on. We know that clearly the sharing of information has got better now because we've now got a website, and we're using that as a mechanism for reporting issues, and obviously then making sure that partner agencies are actually addressing issues that are brought to their attention. The park itself, in terms of the spend on it, that was obviously a discretionary spend, so we feel that that's a direct benefit to the community, and we will continue to work with them as such.
I think we could probably just, if we could discharge that priority, Councillor, I think we can deal with it now as business as usual, and if it becomes an issue, we'll flag it.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Just one, as the weather will start getting cold now, we're talking about Sheridan Lakes.
Yes.
You won't be needing so much manpower at all.
Well, I certainly won't be taking my swimmer down there.
No. So I wonder if you've got a bit of time, then you could use occasionally to encourage cyclists to use the cycle lanes in Sheridan High Street, which Council paid a bit of money for.
I will speak to Cheryl about that.
Did I miss somebody? No, I thought I did. But okay, so sorry, do it again. So that leaves us with guided bus begging in Cherrington High Street, the pavement site you just spoken about. Is that where we are? Everybody happy with that?